Welcome into a special edition of the Hilton Head News. I'm Bob Stevens, joined by Mayor David Bennett. We're going to take the whole half hour to kind of set and reset and kind of get a handle on where the 10th largest community in the state of South Carolina sits. I saw the census data. We're big time here.
We're growing, Bob.
We pick a week to talk that is now 8 months since Hurricane Matthew. That has seemed to have been kind of a good demarcation line to work from. How are we doing?
I think we're doing really, really well. I mean, obviously, when you look around, you no longer see huge debris piles everywhere you look. And I think so hats off to our town staff and our contractor, Crowder Golf, for all the progress that they made, particularly in those first 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, there's still obviously a lot of work to be done on a personal basis, and everybody individually getting through whatever little turmoil they have through all of this. But
well, and town staff
town-wise,
continues to have a fair bit of work in front of it as well. I mean, the beach needs to be renourished in spots. Obviously, our storm system needs to be cleaned out, and they are hard at work on that.
Yeah, now we got to pay for it, and that's something that is not under the control of the town because we're working with FEMA and with all of that going on. Where are we there, and what is town council going to have to start to consider over the coming months in dealing with all of that?
Well, fortunately, our community had the foresight to set aside quite a bit in capital reserves. I think before the hurricane hit, we had $26 or $27 million in reserves for just such an instance as this. Mm-hmm. And we've drawn heavily upon those. We've also issued a bond anticipation note in the amount of $20 million to provide some capital while we await FEMA assistance, state of South Carolina assistance, mm-hmm. and potentially assistance from Beaufort County itself. So we've been using some of those funds. We expect our first FEMA reimbursement probably in about 4 to 6 weeks.
Really?
Estimate that initial payment to be about $5 million. And then, of course, the state budget, which is getting closer and mm-hmm. closer to being finalized, calls for reimbursement for 90% of the out-of-pocket cost mm-hmm. or the local match portion of the disaster recovery expenses. So all those working together, I expect our final out-of-pocket to be somewhere in the $12 to $15 million range. The real question is, how do we get from point A to point B, and that's going to take some cash flow management. But
yep.
I think we have good reserves to pull from. We have that additional bond anticipation note proceeds, and I think the county is prepared to assist if necessary.
Does all of that impact the budget process you're going through now for the next year, the more short-term thing, or can, because of the flow of money, can we is that on a different track from regular budget procedures that we're going to be going through?
No, it's not necessarily on a separate track, but it does impact the budget to some extent. The key is to find that right balance between cleanup mm-hmm. and continuing to move the community forward. And I have every confidence in the world that our town council will strike that right balance. Let's
talk about that balance. Let's talk about the budget priorities. What are the priorities of town council as we move forward into the 2018 fiscal year?
Well, the town council remains committed to the Sanitary Sewer mm-hmm. initiative, which, as you may recall, is a 5-year master plan that was put into place about a year and a half ago to make sanitary sewer service available to every individual on the island within a 5-year period of time. The Hilton Head PSD is now under construction on mm-hmm. year 1 and year 2 improvements, and we will continue moving forward for years 3, 4, and 5.
Financially, is that working out? Is it turning out to be more expensive than we thought? Everything seems to be these days.
It's more expensive than the initial estimate provided by Hilton Head PSD. Now, in Hilton Head PSD's defense, I mean, they gave that thumbnail estimate without any engineering drawings, without any specs whatsoever. So it was just a very, very, very rough estimate as it turns out. The bottom line is the cost is what it is. It would have been a lot less had we done this 10, 15, 20 years ago, Absolutely. And it'll be a lot more 10, 15, 20 years from now if we don't get it done right now.
Absolutely. Police protection, we noticed that the sheriff wants a little more in the way things work out for protecting the island. Is that going to be is that still a negotiable item, or is that something we're just going to have to?
That is up for negotiation.
Is it? Good.
In fact, it's going to be discussed at the Intergovernmental and Public Safety Committee of Town Council this coming Monday. Mr. Kubik, Beaufort County Administrator, is coming over. I don't know whether he's going to bring Sheriff Tanner with him or not. From my personal perspective, I have every confidence in the sheriff is going to provide the public safety services that he has been elected to do. I'm confident of that. So the question is, how does the county properly allocate the costs associated with that budget? And I think there are some questions, certainly in my mind, and I believe in most of my town council members' minds, on how that exactly is allocated.
I would imagine, and that's something I want to get into a little later on, the relationship between the town and the county, and the kind of relationships between a number of those groups. Any other budget priorities? Any other things you want to make sure folks know are priority items?
Well, the visioning effort I expect to continue forward. It's made really good progress here in the last 6 months. I have every confidence in the leadership team that we have assembled to help guide that effort, whether that be David Burrell from Future IQ Partners, which is the consulting firm that has great experience in that realm. He's assisting us. We've hired a young lady, Emily Sparks, who's very talented to be the project team leader. And then, of course, I continue to rely upon our very capable citizenry. And Sandy West, one of our local citizens, is spearheading a committee of citizens to help guide that process. So I have every confidence that that will continue moving forward. And then, of course, our arts and cultural initiative continues to press on, as will our road paving of the dirt roads. Okay.
Well, let's get into that a little bit then. That wasn't quite where I was going to go next, but but that's all right. The Arts Center is kind of a flashpoint. People love to talk about that and the whole arts initiative. You've had consultants in, you have a committee of town people who are working on it. In the middle of June, where are we on all of that, and what's next?
Well, we're about to receive a set of recommendations from the Community Services Committee of Town Council. In fact, that will be discussed next Tuesday. So if
busy time coming.
You're interested, I would encourage you to attend Town Council next Tuesday at 5 p.m. But we're receiving a series of recommendations from them on next steps. To back up a little bit, just so that everyone has an understanding of my personal thoughts on that matter, if they matter. That whole initiative was designed to help our community exact accountability where I think it was short of, and I mean that with respect to the current Arts Center. It is about understanding that the town invests well over $1 million every year in arts and cultural organizations on the island, whether that be the Hilton Head Symphony, Mitchellville, the Art League, and on and on. And many of those organizations could be facilitated to perform better. And the idea is to try to find ways to enable that to occur. That could mean a venue. In the instance of Mitchellville, when you go out to the site today, you see a piece of land and a few interpretive panels, but it's a very special story about a very special people, and I think it has enormous potential. But the question is, when you or I or a tourist that is interested in history goes there, what can they learn from that experience? And if we make some improvements, i.e. add a venue element to that, can we enhance that experience? Can we better tell that story and better use our financial resources that we allocate to these organizations every year? And I could tell you a very similar story about each one of the organizations, whether that be the Coastal Discovery Museum, which has that Smithsonian affiliation and the ability to attract and exhibit Smithsonian traveling exhibits, yet they can't because they don't have the space to be able to show those. So the question is, if we made additional resources available to an entity like the Coastal Discovery Museum or help them raise that capital themselves, wouldn't we all be in a better spot? And I think the answer to that is Probably yes.
Yeah, sounds like you've at least got everybody talking, which is something I think we certainly need to do, is get all of the different
Absolutely.
partners at the table and talking. We've got much more to cover with the mayor. We will be back in just a moment on this special edition of the Hilton Head News.